Have you ever wondered what it could be like if legendary Pokemon groups got new members? Like if they made a legendary trio into a quartet? Well, I have, and I have made a whole series of videos about this, where I create new members for existing legendary groups. I've already covered a bunch of the legendary groups already, so be sure to check those videos out if you haven't yet, but first, go ahead and keep watching this video, because I have got even more legendary groups to cover today. Let's check it out. So a comment I get pretty often during these fakemon videos is, I wish that fakemon was real, which is very nice, so thank you. But the thing is, one of my fakemon actually has become real. My new mascot Folkachi from my upcoming Histrobi Chronicles game is now a plush, and it is unbelievably cute, soft, and just downright wonderful. The material is immensely soft, the quality is extremely high, as I literally spent an entire year making sure everything was just right, and as this person can attest, the amount of squishiness is extremely wonderful. The best part is, picking up a Folkachi plush directly and immensely supports the channel, and videos just like this one. So pick one up today at Histrobishop.com, which is linked below in the description, and join in on the adorable squishiness, and also help to support the channel too. It would be extremely appreciated, and personally mean a lot to me. Again, go to Histrobishop.com to pick one up, that link is in the description below, and now, on to the legendaries. Okay, so the first legendary group I am going to cover today is the brand new Paradox duo of Koraidon and Miraidon. Now, since this video is being released before the Indigo Disc DLC drops for Scarlet and Violet, there's technically always a possibility we could get a crazy new legendary that is indeed added to this group as a big plot twist or something. But as of right now, it seems like these two are just going to end up as a duo. So let's go ahead and add a new member to their ranks to make them a trio. This is Xerneas, the secret third member of the Paradox duo. Now, at first glance, you may notice that this actually looks a lot like Cyclizar, who is related to Koraidon and Miraidon, as they are essentially Paradox versions of it from the distant past and future. However, if you're going to make a third member of this duo that are based on the past and future, obviously the third member is going to be based on the present, which is exactly what Xerneas is. However, since Cyclizar is already kind of the present version of these Pokemon, but obviously is not a legendary, some creativity needed to be employed to make this all work out, but ultimately I think I was able to. I decided to go for the mutated Pokemon route when making Xerneas, meaning that its existence is the result of a Cyclizar going through a sudden mutation to take on this form, similar to how a Carbink was able to transform into Diancie. And in terms of how that happened, well, I've got a pretty cool story for you. We all know that Heath, the explorer of Area Zero who wrote the Scarlet and Violet books, had a Cyclizar as his companion. Well, Xerneas is that same Cyclizar, who remained in Area Zero after Heath's expedition, possibly because it got lost or something and couldn't be found, and the constant exposure to the unique energy of Area Zero due to it being stuck down there for so long ended up prolonging its life and transforming it into this legendary form. It is still a dragon normal type, as would be fitting for a present-themed version of these Pokemon, but its appearance has obviously changed slightly. It's become much more legendary in stature, and its colors have also changed a bit too, which is to not only make it at least somewhat different appearance-wise to Cyclizar, but also the new colors that have been added to its design are teal and indigo, the colors of the two DLC expansions for Scarlet and Violet. This only seems right since Koraidon is obviously the Scarlet legendary and Miraidon is the Violet legendary, so a third member of this group, like Genzaidon, should definitely have some similar representation as well, and since the DLCs are also named after colors, that fits the bill perfectly. I could definitely see Genzaidon as the Blood Moon Ursaluna of the Indigo Disc, meaning that it's a secret Pokemon that's added into the DLC as a bonus, and you can only unlock it after beating the main story or completing a significant side quest. I mean, we are going to be going back to Area 0 in this part of the DLC after all, so even if it doesn't happen, something like this would work absolutely perfectly, and also just be amazing in general. I have also given Genzaidon a new ability that I'm going to refer to as Draconic Flare, that is basically an equivalent to Koraidon and Miraidon's abilities. Since they add terrain and weather to the battlefield with their abilities, which also boosts their attack and special attack respectively, Draconic Flare wipes away field moves from the battlefield, like terrain and weather, and boosts Genzaidon's speed when the battlefield is clear. Finally, the name Genzaidon also follows in the footsteps of Koraidon and Miraidon as well. Since they get their names from Korai and Mirai, the Japanese words for ancient and future, Genzaidon comes from Genzai, the Japanese word for present as in the present day. Is Genzaidon something that you would like to see happen in the Indigo Disc DLC? I personally don't expect something like this to happen at all, but like I said, it would fit perfectly and would be amazing if it did. So I would certainly welcome something like this happening for sure. Let's go ahead and move on though to another legendary, this time taking a look at the Regis. Now, I actually covered the Regis already in the first video in this series, where I made a Dark-type Regi known as Regis Sombra. But since the Regis are kind of a unique case here, in that they have the potential to have a member of every single type, especially with the additions of Regieleki and Regidrago, I figured it would be fair game to revisit them. And also, it would just be fun too. Before I show you which Regi I have cooked up this time though, I've got to give a shout out to my good friend Oscar Belmonte, who drew the artwork for the designs that you're seeing in this video. Be sure to check him out if you haven't yet with the links in the description, because he obviously does great work. With that said though, I would like to introduce you guys to Regiwraith, a ghost-type member of the Regi family. Now, design-wise, the Regis are obviously pretty straightforward, so there's not a whole lot to explain here. But nevertheless, I think a ghost-type Regi would be really cool, and I also thought up a good backstory for it as well. Since Regigigas obviously creates all the Regis, Regiwraith's origin story would go something like this. This Pokemon came into existence after a failed attempt by Regigigas to create a new Pokemon in its own image. That would be the Dex entry version of the story, but basically, Regiwraith would be the result of Regigigas trying to create a new Regi, but failing for some reason, with that new Regi, quote-unquote, dying, which results in this new Ghost-type Regi instead. I personally think that would be a really cool way to introduce a Ghost-type Regi, and it works perfectly with the lore as well, which is great. The name Regiwraith also works perfectly with this too, as along with the Regi prefix, it comes from the word Wraith, which is defined as a ghost or ghost-like image of someone, especially one seen shortly before or after their death, which is exactly what Regiwraith is, as it resulted from the death or failed attempt to create another Regi. Ability-wise, there are two routes with the Regis. Either you get Clear Body with a hidden ability if you're one of the original Regis, or you get a new signature ability that powers up moves of your type if you're one of the new Regis. And I think for Regiwraith, I'm going to go that route, since it would be a newer Regi too, and give it a new ability called Mortify, which would power up Ghost-type moves. Overall, Regis are pretty simple in terms of concept, as I said. They're just big golems with a type applied to them. But for as simple as they are, they're also really cool. And I would love to see something like Regiwraith become the real thing. Now we're going to take a look at a group that is not so simple though, and that would be the Aura trio of Xerneas, Yveltal, and Zygarde. These three all have beautiful designs, which all have a ton of inspiration going into them as well. So adding a new member to this trio was definitely a challenge, but in the end, I ended up with Rootreza. Rootreza follows the primary inspiration of the Aura trio in that it is also based on Norse mythology. Xerneas, Yveltal, and Zygarde are all based on Norse mythology, and more specifically, the various creatures that surround the sacred tree known as Yggdrasil. So, for a fourth member of this group, I figured I would base it on the tree itself, and that is how Rootreza ended up with its very tree-like appearance. As such, it is a pure grass type, and along with this inspiration, it obviously has the whole letter thing going on too. Xerneas, Yveltal, and Zygarde are all based on, both in name and design, the letters X, Y, and Z. These come in part from the three axes that make up 3D space, since X and Y were the first 3D Pokemon games. Luckily for us, however, there is also an additional axis that comes into play along with these three, known as the W axis, which comes into play when you start talking about 4D space. Now, 4D space is a concept that I am not intelligent enough to cover or even summarize, but for our purposes, all you need to know is that it exists, and it's represented by the W axis, which is also the letter that precedes X, Y, and Z, and therefore is what Rootreza is based on. That's where the vague W shape of its body and head come from as well, which also follows in the footsteps of the other three legendaries in this trio, who all resemble their respective letters too. It also has its own signature ability, just like the other three, called Natural Aura, which powers up all grass-type moves that are used, just like the abilities of Xerneas and Yveltal do for fairy and dark-type moves respectively. Finally, there's the name that we have to address, and honestly, coming up with a good name for this Pokemon was pretty hard, mostly because it had to start with the letter W, since it is the W Pokemon of this group, and the others' names obviously start with X, Y, and Z respectively as well. W is also one of the weirder letters in the alphabet, which made this even trickier, so by all means, please feel free to suggest alternate names for this Pokemon in the comments below, but I ultimately settled on Rootreza because it sounds pretty cool in my opinion, and it has a pretty good amount of inspiration as well. Obviously, it has the W at the beginning, which we've already discussed, and then from there, it's basically a corrupted form of the term Watiza, which is a genus of prehistoric trees which are currently considered to be the earliest known trees to ever exist, which obviously goes with this Pokemon being based on an ancient and mythological tree. From there, the words root and tree were fitted into this term to further add to the tree theme and make the name more unique, and that is essentially what makes up the name. What do you guys think about this name, though, and what do you think about these legendaries? Do you like the idea of legendary groups getting new members? Be sure to let me know all of your thoughts in the comments, and leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more if you're new. Also, be sure to check out those Folkachi plushies with the link in the description and pick one up today, because that supports the channel immensely and is extremely appreciated, and also, they're very cute. I mean, just look at him. With that said though, I will see you guys soon with another new video, and until then, as always, thank you so much for watching this one. I really appreciate it, and I will smell you guys later.